Nashville.
This is NBC Nightly News, Wednesday, January 7th, with John Chancellor reporting from the NBC News Center in New York and David Brinkley's Journal from Washington.
Good evening. A panel of 3 federal judges said today that Richard Nixon has no legal right to the papers and tape recordings he accumulated as president, partly because, in the words of the judges, he might distort or destroy them. The former president had challenged a law passed in 1974, which gives custody of the tapes and papers to the federal government. Mr. Nixon's lawyer said that every president has dealt with his papers as though they were personal property. But today's court decision, if it stays on the books, could change that. Here's more on the story from Carl Stern in Washington.
The 42 million pages of documents and 880 tape recordings are locked up at the National Archives building, at the old Executive Office building, and at a special storage facility in Suitland, Maryland. They are to stay locked up while Mr. Nixon appeals today's decision upholding Congress's taking of the tapes and papers. The decision says that Congress could legitimately have believed that Mr. Nixon would destroy embarrassing material needed by future government officials and historians. The court noted that after the Teapot Dome scandal, President Harding's widow had his papers shipped to Ohio, where she burned half of them. Mr. Nixon's lawyer said he certainly would file an appeal.
I am obviously disappointed by the decision today upholding the constitutionality of the statute that seizes President Nixon's tapes, papers, and other presidential materials. The statute, as we argued in our briefs, is a complete departure from our nation's 200-year tradition concerning a president's right to control, as he deems appropriate, the materials he accumulates while in office.
That break with tradition was welcomed, however, by a nationally known expert on presidential papers, Melville Nimmer in California.
In my view, it should have nothing but a beneficial effect. I think we can get a perspective on that if we see the president as a governmental employee, as he is in a democracy. Suppose we take a subordinate employee, the head of the FBI or the head of the CIA. It would be outrageous to say that they could take their papers and claim them as their own on the grounds that this might inhibit their activities if they didn't have that right. The same should be true of the president.
Today's decision does not actually resolve who owns the papers. Theoretically, Mr. Nixon could claim compensation for them. In the past, Congress bought back the papers of 5 presidents, including Washington and Jefferson, but Congress has shown no inclination to pay for Mr. Nixon's papers. Carl Stern, NBC News, Washington.
At San Clemente, Mr. Nixon had no comment on today's ruling. A spokesman for him said, "I'm sure you're not going to get any comment at all." Also in the news today, dismay at the White House because 3 Russian Navy ships are steaming toward Angola. We'll have the details and an exclusive story on an important development in Angola. Bad weather over much of the country today, freezing people and endangering crops. We'll have a report. And we'll have more on that slowdown of doctors in California because of the malpractice insurance problem. Those stories and others in a minute.
Stay close to someone to laugh with and cry on. Stay close to someone to love and rely on.
When you feel close, it's only natural to want to be close. And if you wear dentures, it's only natural to use Polident with 2 kinds of cleaning action. Chemical action to help clean away its stains, and physical action to help lift away film and odor-causing particles. Polident.
Stay close to someone.
What you doing, Dad?
Got chapped lips out on the boat. Vaseline petroleum jelly helps take the sting out.
What you doing at, Ruth?
Helping to keep my skin smooth with Vaseline petroleum jelly. Who needs fancy creams?
What you doing, Mommy?
Smoothing on Vaseline petroleum jelly. Helps protect Mary from diaper rash all night long.
For your family's skin, use Vaseline petroleum jelly, the skin survival kit.
NBC News learned today that South Africa will soon pull its troops out of Angola, which will mean a major change in that situation. The South Africans have about 1,000 white troops in Angola and about 100 armored cars. The presence of the white South Africans there has caused great controversy in many parts of black Africa. It has caused embarrassment to the United States since the South Africans have been helping the same people we have. Our diplomatic correspondent, Richard Valeriani, uncovered this story. Here is his report.
The administration has received word the South Africans will be out of Angola within 48 hours. Diplomatic sources say the decision to pull out was made by the South Africans themselves and was not the result of pressure from the United States. Neither South African nor State Department officials would comment for the record because, as one of them put it, the situation is too delicate. The South African action is designed to strengthen the hand of pro-American countries when the Organization of African Unity holds its special summit meeting on Angola next week. With the South Africans out by then, it will be easier for the OAU to apply pressure to get the Russians and the Cubans out as well, and to bring about a political solution involving all three competing factions in Angola, a policy which is being promoted by the United States. Richard Valeriani, NBC News, Washington.
If the pullout of the South Africans will ease the situation in Angola, 3 Russian Navy ships steaming toward Angola could make the situation worse. The Washington Post reported this morning that a Russian guided missile destroyer, a tank-carrying transport, and an oiler are in waters not far from Angola. The White House said today that the United States views the movement of any Soviet force in the area with dismay. The White House also said that President Ford boiled this morning when he read in the Post and the New York Times disclosures that the CIA gave $6 million recently to anti-communist politicians in Italy. There's nothing illegal about the payments, but the president was angry because the stories were based on leaks from the Congress. The CIA briefed congressional committees a month ago on the Italian operation under a promise of secrecy, which now has been broken. There were other developments in the story today, reported now by Ford Rowan.
The House Intelligence Committee has developed a confidential study of CIA payoffs in Italy. Sources told NBC News that in 1972, the CIA contributed $10 million, that much of it went to politicians with safe seats, that the money was not crucial to their campaigns, and that the money was given to influence governmental decisions. One congressional source called past payments outright bribery. Some congressmen felt the same way about the payments approved last month. Representative Wayne Hayes of Ohio told the CIA it is corrupting Italian politics right now. Hayes was interviewed in his home district by Scott Osborne.
I think what I probably said was that whoever dreamed this idea of delivering cash to individual politicians ought to have their head examined, or at least have a course in practical politics, because it won't work.
Did you,
And I think I further said, you know, you got the Watergate as a good example of why it won't work.
Defenders of last month's CIA payments to Italian politicians say they are necessary to counter communist gains in the last local elections in Italy. One official said the communist showing really shook us up. Intelligence sources said it has been common practice for 30 years for both the Soviet and American governments to support their friends in Italy. One intelligence officer called the system of payoffs politics Italian style. Ford Rowan, NBC News, Washington.
And while all that was going on in Washington, the Italian government collapsed in Rome for reasons having nothing to do with the CIA disclosures. In Rome, it was a day of politics and the CIA story. David Burrington reports.
Nobody will say so on the record, but off the record, politicians here think, rightly or wrongly, that American money and finagling are behind the new government crisis here.
The Italians have seen so many governments come and go in their long history that they are, understandably, rather cynical. But their natural cynicism got a boost this morning. Newspapers full of stories about the CIA passing money to various political parties. More important, that for the first time, money had apparently gone to the Socialist Party, the same party that today triggered the fall of the government. The decision, taken at party headquarters in downtown Rome, has baffled even the most astute political analysts here. Only a few weeks ago, the socialists insisted they would not rock the boat. But today they demanded a new emergency coalition, and to the astonishment of all, they dropped their demand that the communists be part of it, only that they promised nominal support. The socialists apparently are demanding a bigger role and a new deal for Italy. Party leader Francesco De Martino is heading for Washington soon, perhaps to discuss that idea. If the socialist proposal is accepted, the communists will be effectively shut out of the government again. and it's no secret that is American policy. Secretary Kissinger was appalled at the big communist gains in last summer's election. But if communist leaders refuse to accept the new socialist plan, it could force new elections and possibly even greater communist gains. The crisis itself couldn't have come at a worse time for the average Italian. The government of Premier Aldo Moro, in office for only 13 months, was finally beginning to come up with new measures to boost the economy. But tonight, all the ministers had to resign. Now everything will stop as the door closes on Italy's 37th post-war government. David Burrington, NBC News, Rome.
Louis Azan, head of France's leading record company, was found bound and gagged but unharmed today by police in a house 70 miles from Paris. 3 of the 7 men who kidnapped him in a wicker basket from a company meeting in Paris a week ago, 3 of those men had been arrested earlier. In Madrid today, the army took over the subway system and began running a few trains. But for most people, there was no service for the 3rd day because of a wildcat strike by Spanish subway workers who want a 50% pay raise. The strike caused big traffic tie-ups.
Make every day count. Do what you really want to do. Every day, every day, every day.
Make every day count.
You want to make every day count, but you've got to take care of yourself. So get your rest and exercise.
And we take Geritol every day.
Geritol, to be sure you're getting enough iron and some very important vitamins. Geritol every day.
Make every day count.
You'd never think that in a town like this, where the air is clean, the work is hard, and the nights are quiet, there are people who have trouble falling asleep.
Doesn't matter much where you live. Sometimes falling asleep can be rough, so I take Salmonex.
Salmonex sure helps me relax and feel drowsy, so I can get to sleep.
I know I have trouble falling asleep once in a while. I guess everybody does. What I do is take Salmonex.
Salmonex, it helps take the trouble out of falling asleep.
There was snow from Oklahoma and Kansas through Illinois and Michigan today, and sub-zero temperatures from Canada south through the Middle West. California has not escaped the cold weather either, and there's been a frost over a wide area of orange groves. Bill Windsor has a report.
Damage to California's orange crop may be the worst in the state in a quarter of a century. Tulare County, the biggest orange growing area in the state, appears to be the hardest hit. Oranges on trees were still coated with ice at midday. The freeze came just as the oranges were ready to be picked. Agriculture officials in Riverside County say they believe some growers may be in a hurry to get the fruit picked and to market before the damage shows up. 3 times the usual number of inspectors are on the job here, checking oranges for signs of crystallized cell membranes, which cause the inside of the oranges to dry up in a few weeks, making them suitable only for less expensive byproducts. It will be months before the damage can be fully assessed, but the Agriculture Commissioner predicts it will be substantial.
In our judgment, probably the worst freeze that's affected Riverside County since the famous freeze of 1949-50, which time we can estimate we lost about 50% of our citrus crop.
There is some disagreement on how bad the freeze was, but general agreement that the price for citrus fruit will be going up this year. Bill Windsor, NBC News, Riverside, California.
The Dow Jones Industrials went up again today on the New York Stock Exchange. Today, almost 8 points. They closed a little below 900. The Dow Index hasn't closed above 900 for more than 2 years. There seems to be a New Year's rally on, and Betty Rolland has that story.
This was the 4th straight day of heavy trading on the exchange. Today's rise began slowly, but by mid-morning, prices were climbing fast. By 2 o'clock, volume had reached 24 million shares, and at the closing bell, it was 33 million. Some market analysts attributed the 4-day rally to optimism over the economy. Whatever the reason, analyst Lawrence Wachtel, among others, expects the rally to continue.
There are 2 things that motivate a market. One, the outlook for profits, and 2, the outlook for interest rates. We see profits rising 20 to 25% in 76. We see short-term rates coming down initially. We see long-term rates coming down through most of the year. Therefore, I think for at least the first half up until the conventions, up until the election period, this market will be an upward-leaning market.
Wachtell refused to make predictions beyond 6 months, however. Once the political conventions start, he said, there's no telling what the market will do. Betty Rollin, NBC News, New York.
Earlier this week, we reported December car sales up sharply. They were. However, for all of last year, car sales were the lowest in 13 years. 7 million cars sold. And that figure would have been even lower had it not been for a sharp upturn in the last 3 months of 1975. The doctor's slowdown in Southern California continued today, but for a number of reasons, it is difficult to say how effective it is. Jack Perkins has more.
Valley Presbyterian Hospital in Los Angeles. 3 floors of this hospital have been completely closed. A pediatrics ward, unstaffed, abandoned. No elective surgery being done, employees laid off. And what of the patients? Patients are being directed to county hospitals whose doctors are working because the county pays their insurance. But even they are in sympathy with the slowdown.
The Interns and Residents Association of Los Angeles County USC Medical Center want to alert the people of Los Angeles to the fact that the county hospital is full.
Especially emergency rooms have been full. A person whose own doctor is on strike can come here and, after waiting, be looked at by an intern or resident here. This film was taken yesterday when hospitals were just beginning to cope with the new loads. It was a little easier today. Today, here was one patient waiting in the hall for a room, but some patients have been ordered discharged earlier than usual to make room. A special order of stretchers was being positioned as county hospitals prepare for more patients from private hospitals, which are affected more and more each day by the doctor's strike. Jack Perkins, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Hugh Stewart, the Nebraska judge who has imposed restrictions on press coverage of a murder trial, told United Press International today that a fair trial and a free press are not incompatible. Judge Stewart said, "I still say we can have both freedoms, but one cannot be paramount above the other." The judge said he had not asked newsmen to promise in advance to withhold information during jury selection, but only to recognize, he said, that I have problems with this terrible case.
Now, for the TV viewer with heartburn whose power blew in the middle of the Super Bowl. For the power engineer with heartburn who's trying to explain to 400 Super Bowl viewers why B-sector just went black. For the homeowner in B-sector with heartburn who is sure the tree would fall the other way. Alka 2, the antacid tablet built to fall apart. Choose easy, choose fast, and it works fast, too. Cool and creamy, not as chalky, not as gritty. Alka 2, built to fall apart. Choose fast, and it works fast, too.
Get off the can. Get on the stick. The stick deodorant. Menin Speed Stick.
1 2.5-ounce Speed Stick. Last as long as 3 4-ounce cans of this leading aerosol.
Because this is not an economical way to apply deodorant.
But Speed Stick is solid deodorant. An even, effective layer of protection you apply directly to your underarms. Nothing's wasted.
So, get off the can. Get on the stick.
If you are lucky enough to get this new sweepstakes letter from Reader's Digest, just think, you could be one of over 30,000 people who will win up to $24,000 in cash. In the new Reader's Digest sweepstakes, $400,000 will be awarded, including that $24,000 grand prize. So watch your mailbox and be sure to send in your entry, because it's the only way to win.
The rapidly worsening situation in Northern Ireland was discussed today by Britain's Prime Minister Wilson and leaders of the opposition Conservative Party. In recent days, 18 people have been killed in County Armagh in violence between Protestants and Catholics. George Montgomery reports.
Revenge upon revenge, death upon death, funeral upon funeral. That is Northern Ireland today. This was the funeral of 2 of the 5 Catholics shot to death Sunday night as a reprisal for the death of 3 Protestants in a bombing last week. The latest outbreak of violence is taking place in the southern part of Armagh County, on the border with the Irish Republic. South Armagh is sparsely populated, but full of fear. This lonely road is decorated, grimly, with a wreath that marks the spot where 10 Protestant men going home from work in a panel truck were shot to death Monday night. A breakaway IRA organization said it killed them in revenge for the death of the 5 Catholics. 9 of the 10 dead Protestants came from Bestbrook, a town of 1,000 people. The town is half Protestant and half Catholic, and both sides bitterly condemn the massacre. And both sides fear more killings, a mounting toll, a spiral of revenge, perhaps even civil war between Catholics and Protestants enrolled in hot-headed paramilitary organizations. The British government is moving troops in and out of South Armagh in a great show of activity. The number of soldiers in the area has been doubled with the arrival of 600 more men, plus armor. There are road checks and all the rest of it. But most observers agree that 600 more men coming in from England and West Germany add up to next to nothing in this hotly anti-British area. Many people say the new troops were sent in as a public relations gesture, a way of trying to reassure the worried citizens and the hotheads that the government is going all out to protect them. After all, much of the IRA terrorism comes from across the 300-mile-long border. And a British commanding general here once said it would take 50,000 troops to control that border. Today, in all of Northern Ireland, Britain has about 15,000 troops. George Montgomery, NBC News, South Armagh.
In Washington today, Israeli Foreign Minister Yigal Allon began 2 days of talks with Secretary of State Kissinger. After a 3-hour meeting, Kissinger said the United States will strongly oppose any attempt in the United Nations Security Council next week to change existing resolutions on the Middle East. But Kissinger didn't say this country will veto any attempt. Israel wants just such a veto. Around Beirut, Lebanon today, large-scale fighting broke out again between Christians and Muslims after a 2-week lull. Today, at least 23 people were killed. In Elkhart, Indiana today, a series of explosions and a fire wrecked an aerosol can factory. 1 person is missing and more than 20 were injured. There's no word on the cause of the blast. President Ford told his cabinet today that his budget for the next year, for the year beginning next October 1st, will be less than the $395 billion he's predicted until today. Mr. Ford didn't say how much less. And today at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo, New York, the biggest turnout in years. 30 people marked the 176th anniversary of the birth of Millard Fillmore. Millard Fillmore. Not exactly a household word, but certainly the 13th president of the United States and the only one buried in Buffalo. He is said to be responsible for the first American postage stamp and the first bathtub in the White House. President Ford sent a wreath.
Come on, baby. Let's do the brim twist. Oh, come on, baby.
You want to know what the brim twist is? Tell him, Sarge.
It's a twist. Something you don't expect from decaffeinated coffee. Great ground flavor.
Brim decaffeinated coffee's got great ground flavor by the potful because it's real ground coffee. And that's the brim twist. Got it?
Come on, baby. Let's do the brim twist.
Bet you my mother-in-law doesn't know what the brim twist is.
I do so. The Brim Twist is decaffeinated coffee that tastes like great ground coffee, even by the cup.
Bet she doesn't know why.
Freeze-dried Brims made from real ground coffee, like this.
She knows.
By pot or cup, Brim's got great ground flavor, and it's decaffeinated, too.
That's the Brim Twist.
In Boston today, Sergeant Shriver, one of the Democratic presidential hopefuls, released an outline of his economic policy, which he said would reduce both inflation and unemployment by the middle of 1978. At the same time, Boston Congressman Thomas P. Tip O'Neill, who was formerly a big booster of Senator Edward Kennedy for president, gave his endorsement to Arizona Congressman Morris Udall. There's no question that Shriver, who is a Kennedy family in-law, would have welcomed O'Neill's support. But today, as Shriver gave out his economic plan in Boston, O'Neill endorsed Udall. David Brinkley's Journal this evening deals with today's decision by a federal appeals court that former President Nixon's tapes and papers belong to the government, not to Mr. Nixon. David?
It tells something about life in the U.S. that ownership of a president's papers never was much of an issue until they came to be worth money. They were worth money if he gave them to a library and took a tax deduction for whatever he could claim they were worth. But until about a generation ago, income taxes are so small, 5 or 6%, and that only in the highest brackets, that it wasn't worthwhile to look around for tax deductions. So there was no serious controversy about who owned public papers. Now, the question is not finally settled, since today's decision seems to apply only to Nixon, but it never did make much sense for a public official to claim he owned the public papers. He is elected or appointed to a public office, paid with public money, supplied with office and staff and typewriters, etc., at the public's expense, not his. He doesn't even buy the blank paper. So common sense would suggest that whatever documents he produces in office belong to the public, not to him. But in the years when they were giving away papers and taking tax deductions, until Congress stopped it, a politician would be paid to do the public's work, supplied at public expense with everything necessary to do the work, and then when he gave papers to a library, the public in effect was buying back from him what it had already paid for. The tax benefit obviously was too good to last, and it didn't. John?
Thank you, David, and good night for NBC News.
This is Roman meal, a unique blend of whole grain wheat and rye, coarsely ground to retain all of the bran in the wheat and the rye germ. Defatted flaxseed is added, along with an extra measure of bran. Roman meal is combined with other nutritious ingredients like enriched flour and pure golden honey. The result? Roman meal bread. The light brown bread with natural whole grain goodness. The Roman Meal Company thought you'd like to know.
What makes America work? Making better use of our natural resources.
By analyzing these core samples, we can determine the quality of the coal found underground here, whether it's suitable for making the coke we use in steelmaking or whether it should fill some other need. Coal is a prime source of energy today, and we're trying to make the best possible use of it.
Using resources wisely, that helps make America work. At United States Steel, we're involved.
Tomorrow on the Today Show, CIA Director William E. Colby will reply to critics of his agency in an hour-long interview with Jim Hartz, Douglas Kiker, and Ford Brown. The discussion will include Mr. Colby's views on the extent to which his agents' lives may be endangered by publication of their names and their identities. That's tomorrow on the Today program.
Tomorrow morning on the Today Show, an exclusive interview with William Colby. Mr. Colby, outgoing director of the CIA, makes a rare television appearance at a time when the CIA is the subject of national controversy. Another Today Show exclusive, an interview with William Colby, tomorrow on Today on NBC.
Do you have a medicated cough drop that doesn't taste like medicine?
Have I got a... You can have great taste, tasting taste with Ludin.